And as well as this video tutorial, we've also got the dimensions, the layouts for the sheets, and also some written instructions that you can download in a document below. And before you get started on the project, it's important to make sure you've got the correct tools and type of drywall. So the tools you're going to need are a bottle of PVA glue, a knife with a Stanley blade, and a metre long ruler. Although if you don't have one of those, you can also use a tape measure with a straight edge. And then for the drywall, I'm using a board that's 12.5mm thick. Has a square and not a tapered edge. It's paper wrapped on both of the two long edges, and in total measures 1.2 by 2.4 meters. However, you can also make it out offcuts or break the sheet down, for example, to fit into a card. And so that's everything you're going to need, but this is how you make it. So the first thing we need to do is break the sheet down into smaller pieces we can get the components out of. So step number one is going to be marking and then scoring the top surface. So I'm just going to measure in from the factory edge from at least 2 points per line. And then I can connect these marks with the knife. And now to separate these pieces from the overall sheet, in step number 2, we need to snap the board and then cut the back layer of paper. And I found the easiest way to do this is to lift the entire sheet up on its end. And so now I can support one side with one hand and then use the other to snap the board. Cutting through the back layer of paper with the knife. And repeating for all of the pieces. So now I've got my 3 pieces we're going to get the components out of. We need to repeat those same 2 steps. So step number 3 is marking and scoring. And again, step 4 is snapping and cutting the back. And if you find some of the snaps on these smaller pieces are going a bit haywire, one little trick is to mark the back of the sheet as well. Now that's a lot more even. And once you've got all your components snapped, we're actually going to leave the smaller ones to the side for 1 second. And that's because we're going to focus on this big piece, which is going to make up the back and sides. And you'll notice on the plans that we've got 2 dash lines at either side. And that's because you just need to cut through one layer of the paper and not snap and cut through the back. And you need to decide what side you're making that cut on, because whatever side you do choose, it's going to end up being the final colour of the outside of the bedside table. And the other thing we're going to do with this piece is cut 2 notches, one on either side, that the shelf supports are eventually going to fit into. And we're going to use a similar method as we did before to break up the components. However, this time there's going to be 2 major differences. The first is that we need to score both sides of the drywall. And the second is that rather than snapping this piece out, we're going to cut it, gradually pressing harder and harder from each side until the piece should just pop out. And I forgot to mention it in that clip, but you need to be conscious of where you're cutting the notches. And that's because you want the paper edge of the drywall to be touching the floor in the final bedside table. But once the notches are cut, for step 6, we need to glue on the back shelf support. And I'm just going to use my ruler to make sure it's aligned properly. And you only want a very thin layer of glue, otherwise it's going to squeeze out onto the paper, which is really difficult to clean up. But once it's level with the notches and the glue has had enough time to adhere, you can move on to step 7. Folding this one-dimensional sheet into the back and sides. And so this is going to make up the main body of the bedside table. But to add the top and the shelves, for step number 8, we're going to have to glue up some sub-assemblies. But before we do this, because the drywall doesn't always break evenly, and we need the pieces to fit perfectly inside of each other, we're going to have to smooth these edges. And there's 2 ways you can do this. You can either use the base of your knife to scrape the edge, or you can rub a flat piece that you don't mind getting plaster on against it. And then once you're happy all of the edges are flat, we can add glue. Firstly attaching the top to the subtop. Using some offcuts as spacers. And then secondly, gluing up the front shelf assembly. And after you've waited a few hours for the glue to dry, the bedside table is now done. And you can assemble it as is. And structurally it'll be really sound and secure. But if you want to make the surfaces easier to clean and you want to seal the plaster edges, in step number 9 you can apply either a varnish or wax. And then after you've waited a few hours for the varnish to dry, you can complete the final step, number 10, and put everything together. And you can either just slot the top in, and that's going to allow everything to be flat packed, or you can do what I'm doing and secure it by adding glue. That when dried will result in a finished bedside table.
And no need to feign considering, 'cause all I need are these drywall